Woo! Turn on record. Um, Welcome. Uh, Maybe we can take a breath into our bellies together, because that'll make everything easier, supposedly. So I can feel like very fluttery feelings in my thighs and like my buttocks.
I feel kind of a pulsing right underneath my diaphragm,
Mm.
like a flicker.
And what's lower?
Yeah, just sinking feeling down my thighs.
Mm. I'm gonna check my above. So heart feels. It's like the usual thing probably for me. It's like hidden grief, hidden sadness that I don't tap into very much. And my brain is a bit buzzy, like fuzzy sensation. Probably like that, like, ooh, we're gonna have a mimetic experience. Maybe even like you're gonna get to mimetically get off Tada or something. And me going like, part of me is like, hey, hold on a second, let's bring that craving down. Let's bring that craving back down. um, I want to start with a prayer. Um, I want to start with a prayerful apology. Actually, if you don't mind. So, the prayerful apology is like, dear Goddess, dear Death Mother, dear Black Mother, holding angry drums. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that in some ways, even while I touch your descendant's pain, I don't always quite fully tap into it. And that's a kind of contradiction. And I was told by a friend today that in a way you're like a child who is playing with everything. But a child who hasn't been initiated sometimes will not know they're not allowed to play with something, so they keep being playful. So it's not necessarily that they're being bad, but you're just ridiculously playful and haven't been almost take it personally when you can't be playful. That's my analysis, but also never were really never really figured out because um, when your playfulness is being suppressed for good reason, and when you're just being oppressed, is hard to know. You know, in my own experiences with um, women, my mother, for example, yeah, um, and then my grandmother, who is their mother, and then so on and so on. Ooh, and so I feel like, ooh, I just had this kind of like tracing the matrilineal lineage and going off into the horizon, spiral into the kind of black galactic netherhood. And like, it's very weird to conceive my own mother as having that kind of power, which is interesting. But if I can share my mother's experience, we've been talking about Tanda and Ohara lately, and she was like, "Oh, there's this man. It's been a long battle." Where she's like, finally breathing into her belly, which is ironic because she's this, Japanese woman, right? But she was Christian, I think, at one point, and she did a whole bunch of other stuff. It's like, no, not heart, into her heart. She was like, okay, and then she kind of wrote to me the other day. It's like, I used to think I was horrible at piano, like I play, but like I was thinking of getting rid of it. But today, our piano kind of sucks, but I started playing and I sang the loudest I've ever sang in a long time. And she was like, is that Hara? I'm like, So the rising feeling in my kind of abdominal pelvis thing is like, Portia, what about your mom? Because I feel like I've seen your mom on Instagram or something. If I'm not wrong. I don't know if I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know if it's okay. I don't know if it's okay to call it your family like this right now, but I
No.
feel like I've seen your mom hold a drum or something. Like, is that her on
Yeah.
on the Insta
Mm-hmm.
Greasy? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I love seeing that.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I got just like this real like warm, swirly pelvic feeling tuning into mom.
Yeah.
Um, what do you want to know about my mom?
Um, it's just gonna be this is my jerky part that I really need to watch out because I was like, what do you want to know about your mom?
Mm,
Yeah, I go into that toppy space that like kind of deflects, right? My
yeah.
vulnerability a bit. That would have been the
Yeah, well,
topic.
I figured it would be something like this.
Well, what do you want to know about your mother, Portia?
Yeah.
I asked that actually honestly. What do you like?
Yeah, let me check in and just
Yeah.
see like how that lands. Um,
I'm gonna ask the same question myself too.
yeah, I'm getting just this, just like lots of feelings like moving in my body, kind of warming feelings, and just almost like getting this image of like my mom shape shifting into all of these different versions of herself that I've experienced. I mean, my mom is like my safe attachment parent, and I feel like she's been a really important influence in my path of healing, and just she's had one foot in kind of the allopathic realm in her career, and her other foot was very in her own seeking, which included a lot of connecting to the earth, and she's a gardener, and um, just was one of the first people that helped me understand energetics in the body. I mean, she was influenced by the whole like transcendental meditation community when that came through, and she was kind of this back to the earth hippie in Kentucky, on a farm doing home health, around in the countryside. And I think that TM really helped her regulate her nervous system and deal with her own trauma. But yeah, that's been like a big part of her practice. And she dabbled in like Wicca in the 90s and stuff when that came through and became like a thing. But she's always just wanted to do her own thing. She hasn't really prescribed to any like one spiritual ideology, or she's always kind of had her own beat to her own drum, and as a musician, and is in that way carries the kind of like the certain medicine of my definitely like immediate family, but also in a more extended way. I feel like her side of like I mean, my whole family is very musical, but there's a certain way that my mom, she's like a song keeper. She'll collect just folk songs from really old stuff, but up until contemporary things too. And doesn't really write her own music so much, but it's just like holds the cultural record in a way. And like
Mm.
this, so that's been a way I've really felt connected ancestrally, is, through music and through my mom's, like, connection to the earth. And yeah.
Can I just say, like, when you talked about your mom being like a keeper of records, and I'm just like
Mm-hmm.
bookmarking a little bit, just riffing or like whatever that brought up. Like, I think I'm more and more in touch with, like, just even this moment, more in touch with my mom's witchiness, that
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't register herself. She's like,
Mm.
but she a while ago she took like she grew like this heritage cotton from the region of Japan I'm from like a seed,
Mm.
like, but hasn't been like, kind of just been the cotton seed that's been just kind of there and hasn't been grown, and grew a whole field of it and started doing this thing where she's making knitted, well, she spun the cotton and my aunt knitted it into a scarf, and I have it, which, and I hand dyed it, so it's like three
Nice.
Hozumis have touched it. But even something like that, I was like, oh, I kind of dissociate at the idea of my mother being like this, kind of that earthy, dark mother kind of vibe, as opposed to the
Mm.
person who's just kind of, in my eyes, probably given their power away to their family. And I was always been like, I don't want that. I don't want you to do that. Even as a child.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really interesting. Even as you talk about your mom, I was like, oh, yes, yeah. I mean, my mom was really into meditation, and I
Mm-hmm.
got a little. I don't want to talk. It's kind of embarrassing to talk about it too much in detail because it's her detail. But she got really high into some shit. Let's put it that way. And
Yeah, I mean, the TM community, I could talk all about. I have opinions about all of that, and just what's different from my mom's practice than how I choose to practice, and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah.
well, that's the whole thing about like giving your power away to, even, I don't know about TM, but like to spiritual leaders, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And um that imprint, like, I just realized there's imprints in my family around the witch wound that I didn't actually even register now that I'm talking to you. So it's kind of weird. You
Mm-hmm.
have to have these conversations, like, without the prayer, without you saying that shit. I'm like, it doesn't become real, but now in the moment it's like high resolution, actually, like, oh no.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my mom did, like, emotional freedom technique, like the
Uh-huh.
tapping and reflexology, but she never really,
Which
she
all
doesn't.
has roots in Asian culture. I
Right,
mean,
right,
all
right,
of that
right,
stuff's like directly links back.
right. She does this like witchy thing that connects to her lineages, but it's like, just, I got really the resolution of like, oh, I am my mother's child part hasn't made a lot of sense till now in this moment, because I
Hmm.
always see her in opposition and me critiquing her,
Hmm.
and she always comes to me like, hey, I wrote a poem, do you, is this a good poem? She always comes to me for validation. And I give her honest thing, and she's always like, oh, you're so smart, Tada, Tada. It's like, oh, I don't know, but I do realize I've always felt I'm my mother's child, but I haven't felt my mother to be powerful necessarily in that. You know what I mean? Like she is this kind of witchy woman who never fully went for it in a way, or
Well, it kind of sounds like there's a part of you that's starting to relate to a different part of your mom, like where there's this pattern where you've related in a certain way and had a dynamic, but there's a part of you that's coming online that can see a part of your mom maybe that she hasn't fully claimed outwardly, but you can feel it.
yeah. Well, she wrote to me a few. She's been sending me some poems, and I mean, even her mentor was a real weirdo. Her mentor was like a medium and stuff. I didn't even know her poet mentor, and I talked to her about it. I was like, what? Who is this person? They're really bizarre. But ooh, and I feel weird tension in my right shoulder. This keeps happening over the last few weeks, especially when it gets into the subject. So there's some shit going on there too. But oh, okay, hold on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, slow it down.
Enough of me. I like to pass it
I was
back.
so curious though. I was there.
You're, yeah, but
I
that's
was
what
like,
came.
yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
moms, yeah,
Well, you're a mom.
I
Oh,
am.
okay. Well, there's also where I stopped you, and we can hop back on that train. You know, we stopped for the scenery, went to the, you know, it's like the train, you know, stops at for 5 minutes at a station, and you get to
The mom
explore.
stop.
You got mom stop, you buy some snacks, and we're back on. I mean, do you want to anything you want to keep going on?
The mom stop. Well, it's interesting. I was listening. I started kind of organizing to try to maybe do some more teaching around the witch wound. And so I was listening to this interview that I had done with Max Dashu today. And
Mm.
she's this, one of my kind of sheroes. Yeah.
Well, just because this is a podcast, so the witch wound people don't know what it is, so we might as well actually introduce it. It's
Break it
not
down.
it's not promotion,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and I don't give a
Yeah.
shit,
No, I
but
figured this
might as
this
well.
is this is the overlap, right, of our
Yeah. So the witch
kind
wound
of
in eh,
passions.
the witch wound in 2 minutes or less,
Oh no.
and I'll
Yeah, well, I
bookmark
mean,
the Max Dashu thing.
yeah, I mean, that came to me as kind of like a vision, dream-like kind of altered state, ancestral download, something like all the trees, like an aerial shot of Europe and all the trees getting cut down and fire and, this energy of just total destruction. And then that kind of spreading around the world. And,
Mm.
it was like the ancestors just woke me up one night and were like, like, and it felt like a teaching about the energetics in the body, like the tree of life in the body and how
Interesting.
that
Yeah.
pattern got fractured and then how that fractured, and all the strategies to cope with that trauma got exported around the world. And like, where are we in various states of development in terms of like the complex trauma pattern that's held both somatically and in the identity of like the macro cultural bodies, right? So like the witch wound held in the white cultural body is going to be more frozen, more disassociated, in some ways maybe more somaticized.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know, like just really like but that same wound is being held in like indigenous cultures, in
Sure.
Black culture, folks, like anybody, like all around the world, cultivation has been, and so yeah, it's kind of, I think I look at it as like a developmental,
Well,
very similar to your work, and this is why we know each other.
well, yeah, because but can you tell us? Actually, I don't want to say us because it's like a who is us right now. Can you tell?
The unseen web.
Can you tell the unseen web? Because it's actually well, you had like a very specific energetic breakdown, right? As well, and that was kind of like where
Um,
work was similar, but I didn't really realize till recently that it was that there was
yeah,
that much. You actually have more detail than me in
well,
some
I
ways.
nerded out pretty hard for a minute, like
Yeah.
overlaying. I was kind of using like the chakra system, like the seven, like breaking down the energy centers, more of the seven energy centers versus like the three
Three Dantian.
brains, or three Dantians. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was within that, it was still broken down into the three. So there was like upper, middle, lower, and then like more
Right.
detail.
Right.
But yeah, I can't like super, I don't know if I want to go like completely deep dive trying to recall all the like subtle nuances of that, but I mean, it was kind of like the heart being the bridge of the two worlds, and like how can we actually get down, a lot of it was like about being able to get down into lower body and that opening up the vortex, the energy portal.
Right. The Kundalini kind of.
And then then the
Yeah.
upper worlds are actually in relationship and we can utilize them a
Mm-hmm.
whole different way, and then that's when it gets really like magical and trippy
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the change that's possible. you know
Right. Right. So you did actually have a very similar kind of lower body is frozen
uh-huh.
kind of analysis that I did.
Well, and it came to
Even
me because
yeah.
I think a little background might be helpful, is like for people, we've talked about this, but when I, in my own process, when I came out kind of in like as a witchy person, which
Mm-hmm.
looking back, I always have been this way. I'm doing all this like art now, and I'm looking at the art that I was creating in high school. And I used to create these like paintings of like chopped up body parts and like women in corsets with like, like I have this one painting, it's like a decapitated, like the head is cut off. It's like a corset, like constriction, and like it ends like no lower body. It's just like this mid squeeze. And it's like, where did that come from? Like this is like real deep ancestral stuff. And yeah, like just my own like awakening as a witchy person. Then of course my clientele started resonating in a different way, and the people coming in were more aware. But like the whole time I had started noticing this pattern of people having, gut issues or, issues, in their lower body gynecologically, paired with something in the upper like TMJ or headaches or
right. That's very cool.
All the autoimmune stuff, it's like any kind of chronic condition. And then there'd be all these like identity issues, and it started turning me on to like how trauma is held in the body more intergenerationally and ancestrally. And then I started just geeking out about epigenetics and just like, all of it.
In what years were you doing that? And I think the TMJ and all that stuff is interesting, because that's not, in a way, that's like, it's kind of like, it's just like kind of like, like we have a similar style, but you do different things, kind of like vibe. It's like, because your specialty is different. So you have the different feeling that you bring, which is very cool to hear. And also like, what have you been doing for 4 years? Because even 5 years probably, right?
I mean, my practice has really changed a lot over the last, like I went back to school in like, 2009. I thought I was going to go into nursing, and then I ended up going into TCM school and like health coaching. And so my actual credentials are I'm a licensed acupuncturist and a health coach, board certified. But I've done a lot of body work and energy work and studied in just like multiple systems. I mean, I'm a seeker, so I'm very interested in like, where is the common root, right, of the healing traditions. And I mean, really all traditions, it's about like taking out what's not needed and putting in what is needed. That's kind of the basic.
Yeah.
Returning the wholeness, the fracturedness, reconnection, disconnection, reconnection, like all of that, yin yang.
But what year was that?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2012 from health coaching, 2013 of acupuncture TCM school. And then, I've just been practicing since then and really integrating a lot. And so I was working with, fertility, women's health, like autoimmune, like a lot of, how does stress show up in the body over time? But I was always interested in the spirit and, Asian medicine language, and just like, how is, the personality and like, all of that showing up, and in how to support relationships, whether that's relationships within the internal landscape or relationships. My undergraduate was in biology, but I was really interested in ecology. They didn't have an ecology.
So, but when did you start getting hip to like this witch wound thing though then? Or like starting to the early...
Yeah.
Was that like 2014, 2015 or something?
2016 is when it really came online for me in terms of like where I felt the ancestors just kind of like shake me. I had been creeping into more ceremonial spaces like throughout my my graduate studies. So I was taking, I was thinking about like how these, magic and how this is taboo and, alternative healing. And I felt like there was this like long runway, but the ancestors kind of like shook me in 2016. And then, 2017, 18, 19 was when I really like witch wound full on.
Because you contacted me in like 2018 or the 2017? Must have been early 2018. Exactly. I think it's early 2018. Because I think what's really hitting me, and it's interesting, I think we got off the mom train a bit. We're in like the let's talk about ideas place.
Yeah, moms are supportive, I feel like, of that.
Yeah, I think the moms are giving the go ahead. because 2016 is, or like, okay, so I started um doing this thing where I started studying Japanese movement practices in like 2015, 2014ish, around how people used to move in like the old Japanese era based on like old paintings and things like that. There's like a whole
Mhm.
study of based on clothes and like paintings and other reference materials and stuff that are about recovering like how Japanese people used to move. That's the nationalist kind of movement. But I kind of started mapping that onto colonialism and westernization, going like, oh, wait a second. And then putting together this whole thing around, trauma being this thing that it affects your, body. Your chi goes up in your
Mhm.
head. That's kind of the way.
Mhm.
I have a very simple map for trauma. There's no vagal da da da. It's like I should just chi goes up. that's it. I have a very simplistic way, and I don't know if
Mhm.
that's. I think it might be needing to be more detailed, but I'm using simplistic because actually been really helpful for me. But um, that's the train I've been on, and actually roughly maps on 2016 is when it really won. The ancestors were like, no, whiteness is
Uh-huh.
energetic ailment. This is it. Like this is exactly what it is. And I was like, oh shit. But that took a few years. But then the year it really came together is 2016. So I think it's really interesting. Like I had a person who I was kind of like um seeing that said like, hey, so you talk about all about unconscious fields, but you're kind of like weren't tapped into it, huh? About this subject, because I talked to her about talking to you about some of this stuff
Mhm.
before, and I was like, when you say this, it's like really the same timing.
Mhm.
You
Well,
know what I
I'm a
mean?
big believer in like, yeah, that there's,
Mm-hmm.
the greater forces are coming in, and like I could
Right.
really feel that
I could feel it. Yeah.
shift, and trying to trust
Yeah.
it. And I mean, I felt like I was just like, no, 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 no.
Right. Right. Right.
Actually, I don't need to be doing this. Like, thanks, but
Mm.
this is terrifying.
You know what's weird? I just saw a row of mycelial mothers and grandmothers underneath us, kind of like,
Do a little,
yeah. Well,
yeah.
they're just like a carpet of moms.
Uh-huh.
They're like, yeah, duh. Because I
Uh-huh.
feel like now I understand our connection a little bit, like a little bit more, like, oh, where we're connected to the unconscious. Because you really came to that, and you're talking about gut dysbiosis and stuff that I was really hot on, right? I'm still hot on.
Well,
That's a math,
that's why I geeked out so hard when I found your work. I was like, sweet. I was like,
right?
he's jamming on like my like, what's coming through. And you
Mm-hmm.
were giving just some, the like attachment and like all the cultural and somatic language and all of that stuff. I was
Mm-hmm.
just like, yeah. And, I had learned about attachment theory, in school and stuff, but I don't know, it came into this vibrancy place for me, like when I was connecting with your work. And yeah.
Well, do you want to talk a little bit about? I don't know. We can edit this out, but your annoyance with me too, or like the ancestral annoyance you found, because I found that actually one of the most important conversations I've
I
had
don't know if
lately.
I would call it annoyance. Um,
Anger.
yeah, well, maybe more like, let me just tune in here.
Yeah, let's tune in. I mean, we're cool, right? This is the place where we go.
I trust you in your capacity to ride the wave here.
Yeah, I'm totally riding the wave.
Um,
Uh, my weed gummy is doing good things in the moment. Actually,
yeah, I just hear kind of like laughing in my ears right now.
oh, really?
They're kind of just like, they're just kind of like, oh, honey, like, all right, let's see. Let me tap in. Yeah,
Well,
the feeling I'm kind of getting, this almost like you don't need to go there feeling from them, like don't force it. But I can
mm,
feel there's yeah, it's almost coming like an aching now, not
uh,
an anger, but it's definitely this part of my ancestral voice that wanted to like claim rank with you,
mm,
because you had said that you were, I don't know, you'd said something about like being like claiming some space with cultural somatics and stuff. And there was something about the way you were languaging that, or
well,
something where I
yeah,
wanted to like,
yeah, Mr. Crystal Dick, right?
right,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
and
I mean, I
that
question that.
felt,
I really question that. So
yeah, and it
bring it
felt
in.
like you were able to like feel the fire, and I was able to just kind of like let that run through. And yeah, that,
Well,
I mean,
I mean, do you want me? Can I replay the scene a little bit? How do you feel?
please. Yeah, we can edge into that.
Yeah, yeah. You got your safe words there. I got my safe words here.
Okay.
Green, yellow, red. Okay.
Yeah, we can.
Um. Well, it was just you, like you just mentioning, something about you claiming something is cultural, and I've been struggling with cultural smacks for a while. Like, it felt like a beautiful crystallization, a powerful word, and I've been completely confused about wielding it. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
sword that I'm like, what is this doing in my hand? Excalibur.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to let go. I don't want to let go of Excalibur. It's like kind of like the ring almost. It's like I don't want to let go of Excalibur, but I also want to hold it. Can I create a facsimile? Can everybody get a copy? Does everybody get a copy? Does everybody deserve a copy? I mean, does everybody want a sword? Maybe they want a spoon. Like this is kind of thoughts running in my head, like in a metaphorical sense. And um, so what to do with it? Like how do I own my work and also recognize that's part of a field and
Mm-hmm.
also not be so fragile with people that like it's like no, you got to claim your own shit, like you know what I mean, like there's this multiple thing going on at once.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you talked about um like Tada, we've been doing this work for a long time, and part of me was like, what work? Which part of it do you mean? Because whatever you call the name, cultural semantics, I really don't care. I really don't care. But the foundational theory that I thought, I was like, thank you, ancestors, for the brilliance, and also like, fuck you as well, annoyed a bit, is that cultures are bodies. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing that's important to me in terms of what cultural somatic or cultural soma has meant, is that cultures have bodies, cultures have nervous systems. When you understand that, you understand why, um, you understand the Kavanaugh trial. You
Mm-hmm.
understand the little micro movements and the little micro nervous system movements on a grander scale that don't seem to be just quite an individual's nervous system. You know what I mean? Like when you're at like a board meeting and you're talking about anti-racism, and then the white executive person starts to yawn and dissociate. That's more than that person's individual experience. It's a cultural experience.
Right,
Cultural
right.
someone's responding, right? It's like
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, the body's a possessed state by that group, and it's enacting itself that way. And that was one thing. And then there's this whole other hara stuff around the lower body and stuff. And I think that was like a thing that's like that's my style because of my ancestral lineage. But I feel like you pointed out that like, hey, it's kind of like the way you're saying it was, and like I was riding on my, on the horse of the crystal deck and be like, no, you're actually in the land of magical white witches, working with wombs, and you need to fucking put your sword down. I was like, there's like an element
Well,
of that.
I don't know if you need to put it down, but just like recognize where you're at. Like, I think that was what was really coming through that wave of like, poof, like I could feel that come up where it was like, I wanted you to see me, like, look at where you're at,
Right.
you know?
Look
And
at
it's
where
like,
we're at.
yeah, you don't need to put your dick away.
Just look at me.
It might be useful. I don't know. TBD.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, just like be in relationship, right?
Well, can you say that again? You want me to? I'm not talking to you. I guess I'm talking to you. Maybe I'm talking to you. Maybe I'm not talking to you.
Well,
Like
you
you said,
might.
I might talk to you. But the thing about like, I want you to see me, like that feels really big as a spell. Because I heard that not as, because
Uh-huh.
when you talked about that stuff, to me, I didn't hear that as you, just you. You were like speaking for a
Right.
larger collective field
That's how
body
it
of things.
feels to me too. Yeah. Like it feels
Yeah.
like the ancestors are saying that. Like if you're going to teach on whiteness, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
know like the white body. And that's not like
Mm.
I mean, it's,
My crystal dick is going limp right now.
yeah. Who's
What
topping
happened?
who?
Keep going, keep going, keep going.
Yeah. No, but that's the
And
thing. It's like,
white femininity as well, right? White
yeah, because
womanhood, right?
that's the witch wound, and by white femininity or white womanhood or all of that, like I mean that again in the broadest sense, because the witch
Sure.
burnings, which is like where my ancestors are like really pointing me to, they're like, focus on this. They keep like turning me back to that. And I'm like, I don't have a degree in this. And they're like, but your body is like, in this. So, and like all of your clients are feeling this, and this is like the whole culture, and deal with it, like this is the healing that needs to happen right now. And, I feel like white women are in this interesting positionality because there's so much like in the current culture, it's like we hold a lot of power, but there's also this deep,
just really the power though, right? I don't know. To me,
it's interesting from attachment perspective. It feels like white women are kind of in this current, I don't know, this might be a little like triggering for some folks maybe, but like attachment language wise, like movement kind of pivot from like, the black daddy, or not the white daddy, kind of like angry at like the white patriarchy, to like, pivoting towards black mommy and being like, Black feminism, please hold me and like tell me what to do so that I can be safe and like not get cast out, because I'm so afraid of burning and being cast out, because
right, finding the next place you can be safe.
And if I can't be safe in proximity to white daddy patriarchy, then maybe black mommy will protect me, but like that's not actually safe for black femmes.
Well, right? It's also
soothing for
it's for fragile. The whole structure is fragile. So I guess I don't hear power, but I hear
it's like an illusion of power, as you would call it, like false zone of tolerance, right? Kind of like privilege.
Part of me like wants to like turn this crystal dick into like a crystal whip and just like I'm no good with a whip, but I really want to hear that part. Actually, you said like, was it like, I want you to see me or something? I want you to see where you're at or something. Not even I want you to see.
Just see the kind of the land that you're in, right? Like that the experience of like, as quote unquote, as a white woman, right? Settler colony, settler heritage, trying to like explore all of that. I feel my ancestors.
What's your most non-fragile way to say it to me?
Well, I'm curious, like what you want me to say to you.
I want you. It's like
I feel like there's this thing that you want me to say to you.
No, like I want it to be so strong that it blows something out of my system. Do you know what I'm saying?
So you want me to just like blow something out of your system? Okay.
I think so.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm like totally there in this moment.
Okay.
To blow something out of your system. We might
not like totally blow it, but like more like tell me that like I feel like there's something, it's like you said it already once, it's like that notice the land that you're on, kind of like the terrain that you're traveling
there's like some frozen shit, like there's an iceberg, like you talk about chi going up and like the hara. To me, it's like the hara in white women, ancestral speaking, is frozen. It's like an iceberg, and whiteness general, and the European body generally, right?
Oh no, but it was about your rank, actually. Your rank, like see your rank.
Well, that's like the fractal, there's like a fractal component there, right? Like, so there's you and me, and then there's our ancestors together, right? And so it's kind of like the both and of like, see me as somebody doing this work with you, like in the fields, right? Like we can totally like get into it. Like I'm so down.
Do you want a part of the crystal dick?
Like I would massage the crystal dick and just like willingly get in there, because like honestly, this is such a sweet spot for me. Like my answer, like it's kind of terrifying, and I don't want to talk about it in one way, but at the same time, it's so life-giving and healing and like the real shit, And so I'm trying to be coming with it in a good way, like connected to the ancestors, but I can even feel now, I can get really like my ancestors, my energy is like, not exactly feeling grounded. I might need to breathe for a moment.
I was wondering, do you want to hold the crystal dick?
Yeah, let's give it over. Thank you. Here. Yeah, I'll just like let it be some weight.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Some crystal dick for you.
Yeah, some deep inner earth, pressurized magic.
Crystalline. like Derek calls it
Uh-huh.
like Vajra, like thunder, that like phallic thunder.
My son and I are reading this book about minerals right now, and there was a chapter, he's really excited about them, that was showing these caves. I can't remember what they're called off the top of my head, but like the giant crystals, like huge, and these explorers climbing all over them. So that's the image that came to me when you handed me the crystal dick. It was just like this deep inner pressurized, like yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, Portia. There's a part. We're speaking in trance a bit, right? So this is, but I think there was a sense when you're talking about it now, there's a sense of, in some ways, ooh, interesting. I feel a little bit of daddy spirit in me. Okay, so we're just gonna go with that. You don't have to, you can call red, yellow, green on that, but I think it's healthy. I noticed the part walking in, and it's kind of like this. I'm sorry I didn't see you at that time, because we could have gone on a mimetic date in 2018. Actually, you've been taking my courses but never coming to class and dancing. We've hung out once, and we've been dancing around each other for like 3 years.
More than
What?
once, I think.
Huh?
More than once.
What do you mean?
Hanging out.
Yeah, no, we've hung out 3 times, but we never really went on a meme date where you really came, like, do you know what I mean? We never
I
really.
didn't claim my rank with you until like recently. I feel like I've held you, speaking to the daddy part that came in. I feel like I definitely held you in some of that place of, like being kind of putting you in a more of a mentor role, or somebody who has something that I can learn from, and kind of, but I feel like I much prefer this space that we're in now, which is like the daddy plus, that there's
Oh,
like,
daddy
so
plus. Okay, I was like, do I still
the
get to be
daddy can
daddy?
come in, the daddy can come in, and I have the part of me that can be like, maybe into that from time to time, but there's like,
Portia,
yeah,
I'm so sorry.
yeah, but it's like
Yeah, I'm
there's
sorry
more
though.
of me that almost like doesn't need, like, the apology feels soft in my system, like as you say that, like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, that feels nice. And also it's kind of like, and it's cool, like, I feel good I feel like there's this whole new thing happening that I feel like I've been experiencing across the board, just like in the arc of my own stuff, is like just actively claiming, like, hey, this is what I want, this is what I need, this is who I am. And it's like feeling people shift around towards that, you included.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because like a big part of my personality is when we're in this kind of place of people manifesting or or people actualizing or people claiming their stuff, is like, I'm very like, I get cold a little bit, like, hey, come at me. Or are you gonna claim yourself? Like, instead of
You kind of want to be slapped around a little bit, I can tell.
me. Yeah, I like to be slapped around a little bit, in the sense of like, I'm the, yeah, like,
You kind of like come like you're Dom, but you actually want to be like topped, I think.
Yeah, well, I think nobody's ever done a good job. Let's put it that way.
Well, yeah, I think that.
Well, I mean, that's not true. I'm gonna give some points to a recent human being. There were, yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna do that. I don't know. Like, wait, we're talking about being magically
Yeah,
topped.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think I'm moving into that place, but so like, yeah, I'm definitely, like, even with my students, I think I told you, like, I'm the person who's like, there's no certifications. If I ever fall or fail, come get me, come call me out, and if you fail me, I'll call you out. That's how I'm gonna keep it real. It's very like kind of very like hara, but like belly center, but very strong, like very like you do this, da da da. And I do that a lot when I'm in pedagogical relationships, and even sometimes in, I can see in my personal relationships, sometimes people take that as like me really distancing, but I'm actually kind of like peeking out of the corner, like, are you okay? But then I think there's something very real, that's not coddling. That's just like, sorry, Portia, I didn't see you at the time, and it's like probably, also another healthy way to express myself and make it not that, or it's kind of like it's okay to have an adult to child moment or something. Sometimes I demand the adult, like just ram the adult, like I want the adult, I want the 100%, like, but there's something good adult to child there that I'm
And in adult to child within whom? Like,
well, like relating to, I guess in that sense I'd say like adult to child here, right? Adult
like
here
you
and
being the adult is really your daddy talking to my little child.
child of not being
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah. And I guess I would say to that, it's like, there's a way in which that feels soft, but I feel like there was also like, I wasn't exactly trying to come in your face. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like
Yeah.
there was a way in which I was kind of also obscuring and not like necessarily needing you to see me, but like,
Yeah.
I think as you've been in your process and some of the, way you were talking recently, like that kind of
Mhm.
brought up something in me where I was like, actually, let's like talk about this. Cause, I feel like there's a way in which we've both been, bringing whatever the ancestors are kind of like, bringing that forward in a way. And like, there is a lot of resonance and,
Well, I think the thing I haven't conceived is that there is some aspect of masculinity to be able to be like, maybe just have been like sense into what your experience is around voice, and then watching some crystal dish person like, come around and like start beating a bunch of bushes and being really aggressive, right? I was aggressive right off the top, probably.
well, you're feisty.
Yeah, I'm feisty, right? So I'm like waving
Yeah.
around this dick and going like smashing around with,
Uh-huh.
being like Hercules.
Yeah,
I
you're
mean,
not like the
yeah.
only one who does that. That's kind of a thing that happens.
Right. And I'm paired with Dare, who's also feisty. So now we're like two warriors, and like
Yeah.
it's like double dragon video
And
game.
there's
Like,
also something that like I like
so
about that energy, right? It's just
right.
like there's a nice, it doesn't have to be bad,
Mm-hmm.
but like I was putting myself maybe in more of like a, yeah, just kind of student role, I think, in relation to you, just in terms of engaging in your content. And there's a part of me now that like feels like actually we've both been doing this work, and I think I just wanted to claim that. And like part of that is me, and part of that is like this ancestral voice that's much bigger than me and saying
Mm-hmm.
like, yo, the hara, that's like one way of thinking about it, but like the pelvic bowl, I mean, we all have pelvic bowls, like we're
Yeah.
all trying to get down in our pelvic bowls. And like the way you're talking about it, I loved the way you came with it, like from the dance perspective, and kind of some of the ways that you talked about, like just like the toilet, and like the more like
Right. Everyday
ways in
stuff.
which like European bodies have been disconnected from the earth. Like I thought like a lot of that was just like, yes, like this is so like like my brain was like, yeah,
Right.
like,
Right.
just
Right.
feel it, like and that's like mostly how I feel. But yeah, there is a part, I think, that is just ready to claim a certain rank, maybe.
Well, it's like a rebalancing of the ecosystem, and I feel like the real honest thing also about horror work as I present it, and then, this came up with some people. It's like you, and I'm very serious. You don't have to give your power up to me, in the sense that I really easily recognize when I'm outranked in something, or when power is being challenged, and I'm like, yes, I'm losing. I'm not. I think it's. I pride myself on that, because I'm definitely not a person, I think, that doubles down. Also, when like essentially they got exposed and they double down, I don't do that. If I get exposed, which you expose me, I'm like, concede. And I think that's some, I'm proud of that part of myself. But um so what I would say in light of that is like even hara work in my culture, hara work is the work of grandmothers who were like
Mm-hmm.
essentially doulas in Japan and energy workers, right?
Right.
It's only survived mostly through male dominated arts or in forms like flower arrangement and stuff where it's a little bit less esoteric and stuff. You have feminine arts that it still uses the hara, but it doesn't quite get talked about as womb work necessarily. But it's also, there's also other traces. It's a little bit more, it's complicated, but it's also very real that I'm not going to understand all the intricacies of my even my own ancestral work based on my gender.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought um that is untrue, but I think it just threw me off, if that makes sense. Like kind of like I was so like in the my insecurities and needing to prove myself and create a brand for myself, maybe even, and or even personality for myself, that even while inside I knew very well that I was like, hey, you want to add on to this thing or be a part of this thing or like kind of like just claim your own space and it, fucking go ahead. I love that. I love it. When's it gonna happen? When's it gonna happen? When's it gonna happen? And like a recent two student told me, is like, you can also just shut up. Literally. So a student said that. I was like,
Uh-huh.
great.
Well,
Well,
there's something to
now
be said for just listening to.
well, and I was very much in that moment like, oh, well, our relationship has changed. Like it's like, wow, now you're like not my student anymore. Kind of like you're not just you're like, you know, you're like in you're where we changed the relationship. So that was
Uh-huh.
really beautiful, right? But um yeah, like there's stuff about my own lineage I can't speak for, and I think a lot of people have given power away to me because I've been caught up in my kind of own insecurities.
Mm-hmm.
um but I think maybe the place where some people don't realize that I'm really good, like when I get challenged I'm just like, here's my crystal dick and please have it. Like I'm really honored, or to say like maybe not honored is the right word, but like really like it really lit up what that conversation we had on how little I know,
Mm.
and especially the kind of realizing of one, in working with white women, I need to actually talk to white women as expert actually a little bit, because I think this is the kind of thing you're onto, is like, one is I've noticed that even with like hara breath, the amount of dysregulation white people experience, for example, people of color, when they do hara breathing, is like completely night and day. Like I can talk to a pretty dissociated Japanese person. It's like, breathe into your belly. They're like, okay, that felt better. Like, yeah. And I think there's something that's like cultural scaffolding that's not just individual somatic, because I find Japanese people who are just as frozen as, just like white
Yeah,
people
there's
here.
a lot of like, yeah, I mean, Japanese is pretty
Yeah.
colonized culture. Yeah.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
interesting, never colonized, but heavily westernized.
Right. Well, yeah, so that's what I meant. Yeah.
Right, right. Or very
Good.
imperial.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Imperial is a better
yeah,
word. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Imperial.
So
Mm-hmm.
there's this interesting thing where you like your so it's like kind of like, not your, sorry, like the white body and the Japanese body, the Asian body can be just as traumatized on a surface reading level, like the joints and stuff, probably stuff that you read really well, right? Like the postural things that are happening, sacrum tension. But there's this cultural difference sometimes, I think, that
Mm-hmm.
plays a big role. And I've been doing a lot of this work, without knowing how much anger is stored and what to do with that.
Well, it gets into the identity, there's like the
Yeah.
way that if we think of like the somatics versus like kind of the identity level, it's like, yeah, all of our bodies are held in various tension states,
Mhm.
intergenerationally. But like as those relax, like what is the identity that's kind of that counter force to relaxing, like what is the
Interesting.
strategy,
What is
right?
the
So like in
identity that's counterforce to the relaxing is
right, the
really interesting.
strategy, like the kind of false identity,
Mm.
like that's kind of been, the protective strategy, like against the
Mm.
authentic self, right? So with whiteness, it's like, I mean, there's all this Christian overlay to that, but all the shoulds. Think of all the narrative shoulds that come up, or with Japanese culture, all the shoulds. And there might be a way in which breathing into the belly, or sitting on the floor, or like different things are more like the nervous system. Our nervous systems can relate differently to that, right?
Well,
Because of
there's
our
this, yeah, that's really interesting when you say identity as, because identity is mental, so you don't see it in posture.
kind of, yeah, like the it's mental, but it's also deeply woven into the somatics. Like I feel like they're one and the same, because like as we come into different aspects of our identity, there's a different embodied experience.
Sure. But I think what I'm
Right.
saying is like the identity piece is like the unseen cognitive element that does express in the body. But let's
Mm-hmm.
say like let's put it this way, right? Like the difference is like, so let's say okay, so I have like Japanese superiority complex, so let's just gonna name that, right? So so you can laugh about it. But there is something about that. So Japanese people culturally remember to still like live on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they have a Western style apartment, their cultural reference is still on the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're also, when they, for their important ceremonies or during the summertime when they're going to see fireworks or these, there's always, it's never weird for Japanese people to be wearing their traditional clothes, like a kimono to go to work. And like, well, I mean, I guess you wouldn't go to a modern company, but if you go outside, with your full kimono or a yukata, like a robe or whatever, people aren't looking at you weird. And so that that body then is going to have a scaffolding where it's like in this relaxed state, it's still going to
Mm-hmm.
access it, going like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Do you know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a body where that identity imprint of this is what I'm supposed to be doing
Right.
is not as strong and not as recently preserved, you're
Right.
going to have that, like that whooshing of that identity somatic
Exactly.
thing that shuts that down. Because I think that's what a lot of people
Exactly.
experience when they breathe in or start healing their womb,
Right.
probably, right?
It is a crisis of identity to get into the belly if you haven't been in there as a white person. Like it
Yeah,
will fuck you up.
it'll fuck you up.
It will fuck you up. You're gonna get
Yeah.
feelings about things and sensations that you didn't,
Mhm,
you weren't aware of, and you're gonna,
mhm.
like all of the fear of
Yeah.
being cast out and literally dying, like all of that comes up.
And I think where I've been kind of like, I'm gonna shut up in a second, but I think where I've been caught is like, um, I mostly work with white women. I think that people realize that that's just my demographic, it seems, for whatever reason, right? And or at least it's been traditionally. That's shifting now. But so this belly, um, it's like there's a part of it, that I relate to the belly in a much more articulate way than white people culturally, but in terms of my gender, there's a lot of function I have no fucking idea about. And I think that's like a weird overlapping experience of like, yeah, there's needs to be some integration happening there. And also like where I think I lacked a lot of understanding of how electric the work can be,
Mm-hmm.
actually. Like how it
Right.
affects people. And I started working differently after I talked to you, because I was like,
Oh.
yeah, I was actually like, so we're gonna be into the belly, but realize that one, I taught to my in my course, I said, some of you are gonna hate me because I'm standing in front of you while you're doing this. Then you're gonna come to
Uh-huh.
hate me. That was a joke, but also very real. But the other thing was more like, hey, so let's be really real here. You might feel feelings or arousal and other sensations that were locked up, and just
Mm-hmm.
allowed that to be like, just the actual conversation, being like, you might have sensations into those places. Da, da, da. I
Right.
don't
It's
need
best
to be
not
a
to
part of
even
it.
interpret, right? In the feeling state of it. Like when you're first going into those waters, it's like I invite people to just
Mm-hmm.
let the analytical mind take a break for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you feel warming and like all of that, it's like, that we, you know, part of that disassociated state is feeling safe in the mental, right? And so it's like there's this, I see it in my clients all the time, like as soon as you touch into the body, it comes out. I do this also, I come out into my mind and try to like figure it out and interpret. And it's like, okay, what if that just steps back for a moment and we just practice actually feeling the sensation of the pelvic bowl,
Right.
and like, an arousal, like, this chi flowing.
Well, the thing is, like, just telling people that might happen, and also that they can have those erotic feelings and sensations. You can report them to me. I'm not necessarily trying to respond to that to encourage that, but it's allowed to exist. Because I think when you
Right.
don't actually, I'm in the body that I am, and you don't tell people that can exist like safely, and I'm not gonna be like, I'm not gonna report similar feelings or anything. Do you know what I mean?
Right,
Like,
right. There's a boundary, like to be able to like name like where the boundaries are, but also be able to like understand that the energetics of it, there might be, when that energy thaws and starts to be felt, I feel like so many people it's so unfamiliar to even feel what erotic energy feels like, what the life force feels
yeah,
like
the
in the
Kundalini
pelvic
moving. They're like,
bowl.
what is
Yeah,
Well, that's the thing. It was almost like, for me, saying that that can happen is better than it getting jammed energetically in the field, and then it starts to mutate into anger or something, and I'm involved in it, which has definitely happened, where it's like, no, like, your whatever you're experiencing, I'm not a part of, but I'm also in front of you. Maybe you're interpreting things a certain way, like,
right,
but allowing, yeah, it can exist, and that actually is better, and like it lets it dissipate, as opposed to when it's shame ridden, and then it's like there, but the person's not able. It's like, what do you sense in your body? And the person's like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a shitty
right,
situation for somebody to be in, right?
right.
So that's been a real big change for me, at least in in the way I work. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'll shut
Well,
up
I mean,
now.
in a way, it like cues safety for people, right? When it's clear, like, okay, this can be here, but this is the agreement, like this is the containment of like whatever the boundaries are of the situation. If that's clear, and then allowing the erotic energy to come into that space,
Mhm.
right? I think the harm happens like when it's not clear, or the boundaries aren't clear, like, and then like people aren't maybe skilled at feeling into that energy, and as it thaws, like there can be all sorts of ancestral stuff that comes up, or maybe not even ancestral, but just even in your own lifetime. But yeah, old stuck energy that moves and
Because this is
flashes around.
yeah, as we speak, I actually have a relaxing feeling in my testicles. It's like my testicles are like sleeping. It's not arousal, actually, but it's just like taking a
Aw.
nap.
Little
But I
cozy
think
buddies.
well, it's like,
Yeah.
it is a thing, though. If you're being really embodied, like, you kind of have to include your
Mhm.
Kundalini system, where you're kind of essentially
Yeah.
asking people to go into dissociated state, and then all kinds of shit
Right.
can happen, right?
I know. I feel like I kind of have to pee a little bit now that I'm feeling
Speaking
into
of,
that. Can we take like maybe a break? Is that a thing where we can take a break and like pause it and
yeah,
come
yeah, yeah.
back?
Well, when did we start?
I don't feel like it. I don't think
Okay,
we're
let's
like.
pause. I thought that good times outro was kind of funny. So we left with napping testicles
Yeah,
and needing to
peeing.
pee,
Yeah,
um,
pelvic bowl
pelvic pulse.
sensations.
Maybe it's a good time to be like, "How you doing?" I feel very giddy, but I also had a wheat gummy and I'm drinking whiskey, so
Yeah, I feel
uh,
kind of tingly.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm drinking whiskey also.
You didn't have a doobie or anything?
A little bit actually before after I was done with work. Yeah.
Mm.
But it feels like it's kind of
Mhm.
yeah, on the down, not super writing that so much in this present moment, but
Uh, Max Dashu.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, that's all the way back. We don't have to go all the way back, but
Yeah, she's a badass.
okay. Tell me about Max. Or tell me about your relationship.
Well, I mean, I feel like Max is kind of a central figure for me in like my own arc of coming into like the witch wound stuff territory, and just she's an independent scholar, and like I believe went to Harvard or something to study matrilineal culture, and was told like that never exists, you know, like patriarchy has been around forever. So
Mm-hmm.
she dropped out of Harvard and was like, well, peace, I'm just going to go be an independent scholar and look at like where are the women's stories, you know, in history, and has just dedicated her life to that, and is just like this wealth. I mean, uh just she knows, she just has so much history, you know. I just kind of I had that experience talking to her where I was just like, please just, I don't want to talk about myself at all, like just please just talk, like I just want to listen and absorb all that you know. But that, you know, that she's just really looking at like where are the women's stories, and you know, it's not necessarily in the written history, right? It's in the pottery and the textiles and the cave art, and you know, traditionally holding spheres of power that were more spiritual and healing, and you know, and again, like by women, I want to like hold that in like a broad term, right?
Yeah.
You know, like
No, I
female
mean,
body people, queer people, all of it, like
yeah,
that,
like this is a non-fragile space where you
right? Like
don't have to
just,
worry about it, but I know what you mean. We're animist, expansive, meta, macro,
yeah.
modular.
And
Nothing means everything. Everything means nothing. So if you say woman, I mean, I think I hear all the
yeah,
layers
the
of
essence of what that means. And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, she's really documented and kind of gone into like the witch burning times in Europe, and
Mm,
she has a book out, Witches and Pagans, that was just like very transformative for me. And
mm,
um but yeah, I mean, she's looked at like the matrilineal, matrilocal kind of cultures where it will be like
mm,
women stay with the mother line, it's passed down, you know, the
mm,
culture is kind of passed down through that, and women don't have to
mm,
leave, and it's like there's so much protection and safety, and it's good for the kiddos, right? You know, it's like when you're going to the you know, to a different place, it's like then you're coming in underranked, right? You don't have any power. And when you stay with your family, it's like you have protectors and allies and people who can
mm,
support you, even if for whatever reason the partnership dissolves, which it does because we're humans and shit's complicated. And you know,
mm,
the kids and the women are safe in those systems because like their sexuality isn't really being policed, because it does, there's no need to ensure fatherhood. It's like everybody sees, you know, speaking of female body people or whatever, it's like you see the person carry the kid, it's like they know where that kid comes from, it's locked in. But you know, I think you know, there's a lot of patriarchy that's been around just ensuring fatherhood,
mm.
and
I see.
like property, you know, this gets into, also I'm thinking of like Sylvia Federici and like her work, and like,
Right.
you know, how bodies and just like the whole shift of labor, and when women became basically baby factories to like make more workers for the labor mills and stuff, like, you
Mm,
know, and how all this stuff was going on in Europe, and then it just got shipped around the world.
mm,
But there's people who are really dedicated to claiming the story and retelling it, and that's, I feel like Max is, and Sylvia Federici, and you know, there's these, in terms of my experience of eldership, you know, like who are the elders that I can turn to that are like holding,
mm,
trying to reweave the story, you know, of my people.
mhm, mm. So it has when you said matrilineal, there's this like
Mhm.
thing came into my navel and into my hara and like doing this thing right now. Um, So my toes are very warm, and it feels like, two, uh, man, woman, man, friend, gender differentiated friends drinking whiskey at the end of the world, on like a hill, and like watching it all maybe even burn in a way, or, but
Well,
it's
it's
like,
definitely still burning, yeah.
well, it's like this nighttime on a hill, there's trees, and they're like, hey, and have
Yeah.
a drink. And it's like, but we're like, it's like kind of like occupying these two different polarities of existence and reporting from the end of the Anthropocene. You know what I mean? I'm going like,
Mhm,
that was
mhm.
fucked. Like kind of funny vision. Um, that's what I had for a moment. Yeah, I don't think that's where we are quite yet. Maybe we're in there, but there's a bit of like, yeah, I don't know. I feel the vibe. I've also had a weed gummy, so I'm reporting from that place a bit. But
Yeah, well, I think that might be our ancestors' experience. Maybe
oh
that's how it feels
no,
to me. Well, a certain piece of it,
huh?
like that's how kind of it feels to me. It's like my ancestors are sitting with your ancestors on the burning
Whoa,
field and kind of being like, yeah, that shit's fucked up.
that's like.
Like, let's have a weed gummy and talk about it.
Well, no, when you said that's the ancestor, when I thought that was the future, that felt okay. But when you said that was the ancestor, I was like, I feel like I got what white people feel, is that like, oh my God, death. Like I got the villages burning, that like, my siblings dying image,
Yeah,
which
I mean,
I don't
and
connect to that as much actually.
in terms of the witch burnings and stuff, it's like some people like there like some
Yeah.
towns like all the women were burned. Like,
Right.
you know, like it's such a scar that doesn't get talked about. I
Mm.
mean, it's like in my opinion kind of like one of the major scars like
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, 100%, 100%.
mhm.
I wonder. I'm just gonna say, I think part of it's like for me, even as a Japanese person, right? Um, like I have a bit of dissociation as a people, like from, oh right, like there were times when villages were burned, and like there's an apocalyptic scene that happened for a lot of tribes of Japan that were,
Mhm.
and it continued to happen for a while,
Mhm.
probably, presumably. So that's really interesting. It feels reassociating for the body, to reassociating personally, multiple levels, to be like, yeah, that's what's happening. And then you shit, I got high for a second, and but there's something that you made it real for me in my kind of image body. Um, yeah, I mean that's big stuff.
Mhm.
And something I think very real is, maybe this is a conceptual question, because like, I don't know, we're in a certain move and we don't have to go this way, but we also can. But it's around. Do you want to hear it? It's a little bit more
I'm
intellectual.
game. I'm just in the improv right now. So
Okay,
lay it
okay,
on
okay.
me.
Lay it on you. All right, let's see. Actually, now I want to know what you want. I'm gonna note it down.
I think what I want, I'm just like following the thread. I'm kind of not wanting to try too hard.
Okay, okay. All right. Well,
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious where you were going with that.
the the difficulty of healing, kind of defining, like, one that it's a well, one way to look at it, it's like, okay, so like this is the first time in thousands of years some people, especially, like, yeah, people are able to even smidgenly connect authentically through sex. It's the first time in a very long time, right? If you think about it, like sex positivity or whatever you want to call it, did
Well, I
not.
would say I would imagine that there's been ways in which people have been on the underground having authentic experiences the whole time, but like in terms of like what is acceptable outwardly, yes.
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
so
And
give me,
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're like, yeah, what is authentic? I mean, to me,
or
it
even
almost feels
more,
like
just like being like, just being able to say like, I like slapping you in the face while we have sex, and then like,
talking about it openly and
or like just doing the thing, even
right,
like doing the kind of thing that's like, I like to like rub myself with balloons with people, like, I don't know, like,
right.
I mean, that's less my interest, but my point is people actually being able to have free sexual choice, and not in that weird power over paradigm. It's the first time in a long time, I would say, especially within a white cultural context, the first time in a
Oh my
long time
gosh.
that women are choosing to have sexual experiences, even at all, perhaps, or at certain level, right?
I would
That's
say like
accepted.
in an outwardly acceptable way, yes.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
on
yeah.
the underground, I think there's always been a thread of resistance and
Right, right,
like,
right, right,
but
right.
yeah, like
Yeah,
in an
yeah.
outward like claiming way.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. So yeah, so there's this thing in the underground that happens, right? But then, I was reading. It's like, so these choices that seem liberating at the beginning, they are, and they're positive, and it's all good and all good. But did you ever read that Janet Hardy article about how she had a crazy Kundalini experience?
Oh, the one that that you shared. I didn't get to that one, but
Yeah, it was
yeah.
about how she was doing kink and all this, and
Uh-huh.
eventually she had like
Yeah.
the world's biggest orgasm she's ever had. And since her body would just go into shakes and crying and grief and
Uh-huh.
spontaneously, and she was like, basically became celibate because she's like, I like
It was almost
sex.
traumatizing. It was traumatizing to her to have the Kundalini experience essentially, and she's having PTSD from it. It's kind of
Well, that's like one way to look at it, but the other way
uh-huh.
to look at it, she had like she's having a huge spiritual experience that I actually think she contained it very well from her writing. She, you know what I mean? Like, but she's going through this process that is very electric. Let's put it to that. It's going to take a long time to integrate the amplitude of
Mm-hmm.
it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you have this reality. She's like the writer of like, I think it's the topping book and the bottoming book, and is it Ethical Slut? Is that they wrote? Did they write that? Dossie and Janet, was it? Dossie Easton and Janet Hardy?
Hardy, yes. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Easton. Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. So what happens when you start to take these things, right? And it's like kink, it's like pleasurable, and you can kind of casually get into it. But the more you go deeply into it, it's like a fucking wormhole of trauma, of cathartic release, like in like trance, like.
Right.
But it's we speak of it as an easy road to kind of end, like, oh, it's delicious, like it's
Well, there's a commodification of like I mean, I feel like kind of
right, right, right. You're telling me where I am.
am I?
I don't know, but
I
no,
don't
that's
that's
good.
kind of what it pinged for me. It was just like like when you said kind of like I don't know, there's a way in which that type of ways of relating can get commodified and kind of like put into a whole thing where like the deeper roots of it, I mean, back to like the witch burnings, it's like there's definitely a sexual shadow like around kink that subdom kind of
Hmm.
interactions that are like in the roots like coming from those times of like
Hmm.
basically like sexual torture, whips, dungeons, like all
Right,
that
yeah.
stuff. I mean, that like actually really happened. I mean,
So
it's like,
that's the thing,
uh-huh.
right? I think it's just really interesting that the entry point into initiation to spiritual experience can happen through something that's very seemingly benign in our culture,
Mhm.
like rough sex. And then all of a sudden you're having a Kundalini experience. Like the pornography doesn't capture that reality. Like that is like that can happen even like if I can finish my thought, it's like how it's kind of like how naive we are about the safety or it's kind of like dealing with our ancestral traumas and edging into these things like the ways our ancestors are doing and all these things. It's not safe. It's not actually safe, and if we think it is, there's a bit of a problem. Like, what do you think you're doing? But the beginning is like, oh, I have a migraine, I get acupuncture. Well, 10 years later you're having a Kundalini experience and you're freaking and howling at the moon, right? 10 years later after that acupuncture experience. And I think there's something really like important and interesting about like the wave of healing in our culture and how actually unsafe it is to tune into your desire in a way. Like it's kind of
Mhm.
like there's a part of me that understands the church's like kind of hatred of sex because it is actually dangerous in the sense that it is potent, it is strong medicine
Right.
to especially to uninitiated people, which we all are pretty much now. It's
Mhm.
actually really strong medicine. It's not positive or negative. It's just like you better watch the fuck out.
Right.
And even that started to make sense. Oh, this is my last thought, but like when I love disco, like it's funny we were playing Chic, right? Good times, but like I love disco. I love dancing to disco, like, and we think of disco as this amazing, liberating thing. But the other side of that is there was definitely a drop from that
Mhm.
high that came in the decade after, and that's not all like people's fault that were dancing disco. No, that, us, but it is a part of the mood. It's part of the coked out, really like high, 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 high disco era, and then boom,
Right. The peak
comes this,
valley.
yeah, the valley. And
Mhm.
that's not just obviously you can't just blame that on the people. There's so many other factors. That's not everybody's responsibility. It's like outside stuff, right? I'm just being like, I don't know, trying to provide a little bit of context. But there was a high and there was a down, and the down was
Mhm.
crushing for some people. And disco at the same time, disco is like so liberating and so healing to engage with. Do you know what I mean? So it's like kind of about the natural unsafety of the things that we're doing. Like it's not safe to get your
Right.
first acupuncture appointment.
Right. Well, is
Like it's
yeah,
not
again, like
safe.
that wild energy. I mean, wild might be a whatever imperfect
Yeah.
word, but like, it's yeah, you can't exactly control where the current is going to flow,
Yeah.
right?
Once you've taken that needle, right?
Yeah, it's about taking the bricks out of the dam and just trusting that the riverbed has some space where you're not going to be overwhelmed. But sometimes you're overwhelmed and then the riverbed is carved in a different way,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
I think I feel like that way about. I think I'm where I'm getting to is I'm feeling that way about sex more now, and really being like instead of being I haven't been worshiping at the temple of the goddess in the sense that like there's a part of me that still like and thinks of sex thinks of like something that's easy, even though the experiences that I have generally are not, right? They're not easy or like they're quite big experiences. There's a sense of like treating it casually rather than like, no, that was a big ritual event. Like there's a part of me that dissociates a bit or is not tracking the bigness of it.
Mhm.
And I think it's part of like, I haven't really fully worshipped at the temple of the goddess enough. That's how
Well,
I've
you
been
might not feel safe enough with the goddess yet.
okay, mommy.
Who's little role reversal
There's no
moment?
role reversal. There's no reversal. There's only different little parts coming up. And
Right, right, right.
do you want to bring it home, Portia? Because I think we're gonna stop recording soon and actually have a uncensored conversation after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, let me see. Bringing it home. I'm just happy, Tada. I'm happy that we're hanging out and like talking about this stuff. It feels really life-giving to me. You know, like to be able to
Yeah.
have these conversations that are like, I didn't know what we were going to talk about tonight. Like we're just pressing record and improv, you know, jazz concert. Let's just go.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of relationships that I want to be in. And I feel like that's, it's like, yeah, coming in practice. Like I want to practice wielding my, my crystal dick or whatever, you know, like
Right.
being able to, yeah, just track like how it all feels to me and like what's happening for you and just practice. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, well, I mean, I am so, when you said I'm like happy to be here, I definitely felt that like kind of lower belly pelvic bowl excitement, genitals warm, kind of like, they woke up from their nap and they're like, they're like kind of not particular.
Heyo.
Yeah, they're not particularly like, banging the drum or anything. They're just kind of like, cool. I see
Cool.
you.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, good job. But like it's kind of like a feeling of we are in I'm like partially I'm glad of a lot of the shit that's gone on in the last few years, and that I haven't doubled like it's I haven't doubled down on, trying to be famous necessarily. Like I got to like a
It's
place.
overrated, I think.
Well, I didn't think so. I thought it was gonna be hella fun, but apparently it's not. But
Yeah, from the people I know who are famous,
mm,
they tell me that it's overrated. So I'm going on with that, I guess.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, is Drake a creepy person now? I heard rumors that he's a creepy person now, or
That
he's
feels
thought
like a stream that I kind of like maybe very peripherally follow,
right.
you
And I
know.
guess like this is to say
Yeah.
that, like I heard that he's done some bad stuff or
I'm
something.
I feel like anybody in positions of power like that probably, you know, with that level of fame, it's like you have to have a certain level of skill to be a safe, famous person.
Right,
Right?
right.
Like to have that much privilege, like being at, you know, coming at
Yeah.
you. It's like, yeah.
Well, the reason why I asked about Drake is because I always felt like I'm like Drake before the mixtapes, and now I'm just like not Drake. Like kind of lamenting about fame, like his early records. That's kind of was
Well,
my
yeah,
my
I think
sense
it
of
can be
myself.
kind of a trip, you know? I mean, it brings people into their unresolved shit.
Well, I mean, I would argue, I mean, I never really got, I don't know. I'm just being annoying here because it's like I'm so disillusioned at the fame culture in our community, and just feel so glad that I'm just over 5,000 follows, and it looks like I won't grow much more than that. I'm just like, cool. I'm just like, I can even hide further, kind of like just,
Yeah.
it feels really good though to like, it's kind of like, but I think it's like that has facilitated me having this conversation with you versus being on some weird summit,
Well, I don't know. I'm at a
you know?
place now where it's like, yeah, I think when I was maybe had more overhead or something, like I was like pushing, like getting out there more. And now that I can just like chill out and just be a weird worker bee on whatever my community
Mm,
is on the underground, it's like that unseen network. It's like the people who find me, if you like me, cool, like welcome to my party. I am definitely
mm,
open to connecting. And I think that there's a time to share ourselves and promote ourselves and put ourselves out there and like get in the middle of the dance circle and like break it down, you know, and be seen and like feel that energy coming back. Like I'm not opposed to that. Like I want that experience, but I also don't want the pressure of our culture to distort me in a way where I feel like that I have to be that in order to be lovable. It's like I'm good. I love my weird little life that I'm forming. And like, I think
mm,
there's something that is like almost like the nectar gets sweeter, being able to distill
mm.
like who can hang.
You know what? I had okay, so I don't know. Do you want to hang out to that crystal dick? Because I have a whole pile.
Yeah, it's just,
Okay.
I got it. It's
I don't know. Do you have anything you want to throw my way?
I feel like you had something coming, so just come with it, Tada.
No, don't make me say it. No, no.
No, you, no, you.
Fuck off. Okay, I don't think I can go there. No. Okay. But what I did feel like is like this, it's like like I used to think that this cultural somatic frame, yes, I figured it out. Oh, awesome. Now I'm gonna, it's like I don't need to gain that much from it, but it's like I needed to cover the world to get this thing accomplished, and me being the center. There's a bit of my image, right? But I'm getting a little bit now like, oh, it's okay for individual practices to be small as long as there's good. It's kind of like instead of like one big crystal, it's kind of like this kind of insect eye crystalline imagery that I had of like, oh, right, like
Holographic crystal dicks.
yeah, holographic crystal dick. You look through each lens and it's like, I
The
mean, doesn't
dicks everywhere.
well, are there and is there anything else than dicks, Portia? Like, what else is going on?
That is the question.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe I feel the big vacuous vaginal womb cavern that the crystal dicks are populating. And how about that?
Just feel into that space.
Hey, wait a second. Wait, no, let's do that. Okay, let's feel into that together.
The epic cosmic vacuum.
Yeah. Well, what do we both feel into that, and then we'll stop recording.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. We'll finish that. What's the opposite of a crystal dick?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just getting kind of just like wide open space.
All right.
I
want some wide open space.
No pressure.
Can I have some?
Whoosh.
All right, let's let's
Mhm.
regroup.